Welcome to the Level 1 Derivatives Summary video series. This video is a summary of the reading on forward markets and contracts. Forward contracts are bilateral agreements. That means they are between two parties, let's say A and B. Now, one of these parties will have a long position, the other will have a short position, or the long position. The party to the forward contract that agrees to buy the underlying financial or physical asset. So if these two parties make an agreement at time 0 that at time T, A will buy one share of General Electric stock at a price of $50, then the underlying is the share of General Electric. Party A is long because it is agreeing to buy, and the other party, called the counterparty, is taking a short position because it is agreeing to sell. As we mentioned before, both A and B now have a commitment. So both have to fulfill no matter what the price of the share is at time T. With forward contracts, neither party pays anything at contract initiation. So another way of putting this is that the value of the contract at time 0 is 0. It is set up in such a way that neither party appears to have any benefit at time 0, so the value is 0. There are two methods of forward contract settlement. So the question is here at time T, should B give A a share, the physical share, or can it be cash settled? So those are the two options, and those need to be, which option is going to be followed needs to be specified at time 0. With delivery, the short will deliver the underlying asset to the long, who will pay the predetermined price at the settlement date. The other scenario is to do a cash settlement, and this is more common. This does not require the actual delivery of the current asset. Cash payment is made by the party that is disadvantaged by the price difference between the market price of the asset and the contract price at settlement date. Let's understand this through some examples. Now, let's say you are dealing with a contract. So this is time 0. The contract expires 90 days later, and the underlying is the KSE 100 index. Let's say that the forward price is 10,000. So on day 0, the two parties are agreeing that the price that will be paid on day 90, which is when the contract expires, is 10,000. The notional principal is 10 million. When you are dealing with an index contract, then you need to specify a notional principal. In 90 days, the index goes up to 10,500. What is the payment? Now, these contracts, which are index contracts, are typically cash settled. So notice that the price went up, which means that the long benefits. Whenever the price goes up, the long benefits and the short loses. If the price goes down, then the short gains and the long loses. Now, by how much does the long gain? How much should the short pay? The short pays actually 500, because this is 10,500. So 500 divided by 10,000 into 10 million, which is 500,000. Let's take another example. You are the CEO of a US-based company and expect to receive 20 million euro in 90 days. A dealer provides a quote of 1.2. Now, this should connect with what you've studied in equity. So in this quote, the base currency is the euro, and it is being quoted in dollars. So this is the quote from a dealer for a currency forward contract which will expire in 90 days. In order to hedge your currency risk, you should enter the contract to buy euros or sell euros. And then 90 days later, the rate is 1.25. What is the payoff? What you need to do is enter the contract to sell 20 million euro at the contract price, which is this. You are taking a short position on the euro because you will be selling euro. So you, the short party, pay the long, the dealer, 20 million into the difference. So 1.25 is the actual price at expiration minus the contract price, which is 1 million. So notice the price went up. So who gained? The long party gained. Unfortunately, you are the short, so you lost out in this example. You also need to understand the concept of forward rate agreements, which are forward agreements where the underlying is an interest rate. And I'll do this through an example. You expect to receive 15 million in 90 days. You expect interest rates to fall. In order to hedge this risk, you decide to use an FRA that expires in 90 days and is based on 90-day LIBOR. So you are here at time 0. You get into an FRA which expires here, day 90. The underlying is 90-day LIBOR, so the underlying expires 180 days from time 0. The first question is, should you go long or short? Now notice that you are going to receive money. So you will receive money here, and when you receive money, you obviously invest it. So you will take a short positions. Since you are receiving the money in the future, take a short position. A short position with an FRA gives you the right to lend at a certain rate. That certain rate is the FRA rate, which in our example is 5%. If you knew that you had to borrow over here on day 90, then you would take a long position, because then you are getting the right to borrow at a certain rate. So this is the situation. What is the terminology? Terminology is 90 by 180, and the classic mistake that people might make is say 90 by 90. That's not right. The first term 90 is when the FRA expires. The second term is when the underlying loan ends relative to time 0. So at expiration, let's say LIBOR is 4.5%. So expiration is this point, expiration of the forward contract. So LIBOR is 4.5. Now rates, actually, so what happened to the rate? FRA is 5%. LIBOR came down. So the difference, actually, since the number came down, you know that the short gained. So whenever the rate comes down or the number comes down, the short gains and the long loses. So if you think of this in terms of a formula, let's just think in terms of a formula that tells us how much the long will get. So the short will pay the long. That formula is the current rate, which is over here at day 90, 4.5%, the spot rate, minus the contract rate, which was 5%, into 90 over 360, because that's the interest for the underlying loan, into 15 million, which is the notional principal, and you get a negative number. So the short is paying the long a negative number. This means that the short is actually receiving the money. So how much will the short receive? On day 180, end of the hypothetical loan, he'll receive 18,750. But the convention with FRAs is that it's settled at expiration. So we need to take this number 18,750 and discount back to day 90. So you take 18,750 over 1 plus 0.045, which is the discount rate here at day 90 where we are, into 90 over 360. That is the convention being used. This period here is 90 days. So you do this calculation and you will get 18,541. That is how much the short will get on day 90. We now come to overview of forward contract. Early termination of forward contracts can be accomplished in two ways. One party pays cash to the other party and buys their way out. And just to make sure you understand what we are talking about here, if this is time 0, forward contract expires over here. If somewhere in the middle, one party wants to get out, is that possible? The answer is yes. If one party pays cash to the other and the other party accepts to receive that cash and end the contract, that's fine. Offsetting. So if you want to get out, you enter into an offsetting contract, either with a different counterparty, in which case default risk still exists and the existing party may still have to fulfill the obligation of either one of the parties, or with the same or the original counterparty, in which case there is no more default risk. In terms of the market for forward contracts, you can have dealers and end users. A dealer creates a derivative contract and will quote a price to take a long or short position. An end user is typically a corporation or a financial institution seeking to transfer an existing risk. Forward contracts are described by the type of asset that must be purchased or sold under the terms of the contract. So you can have equity forward contracts, or forward contracts based on interest rates, or forward contracts based on bonds. With forward contracts, the winning party faces credit risk. And what we mean by that is, say you take a long position at time zero and the underlying starts going up. So you are winning. Then the long has credit risk. You only have credit risk when the other party owes you. If you found this lecture helpful, then I'll be very grateful if you can do 3 things for me. Number 1, like this video. Number 2, like my Facebook page. And number 3, visit analystforum.com and there add my logo to your studying with profile. You can see this slide for help on how to do that. Thank you very much and good luck with your studies.